morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Grant Cameron, and I have a special guest with me today, Jander from at one point it was my favorite city in the world, Chicago. And then I used to drive through there going anywhere on the East Coast, and I really got upset with driving down the 94 and just being like shaking by the time I got out of there. And then again, I went for a training seminar on a healing seminar there, and then I took the train, and I thought, I think it's a really fantastic city. It's just you got to move around in the traffic, and so I welcome Jan to discuss some stories that he was telling. We just came back from an event at Mount Shasta, California, and it was Enrique Villanueva's CE5 Rama contact weekend, and we went through a lot of stuff with meditation and forgiveness and world peace and all this kind of stuff. But there is this contact type stuff, and one of the first people I met when I was there, because I had never been with this group before, I met Jan, and he had just come in with his backpack. He'd flown in from Chicago and had all his possessions with him that he'd brought on the plane, and he was parked his tent right beside ours. And he came and he started telling me these incredible stories of his experiences. And I said, I got to get you on camera, because we've got to do, you had some port experiences. You had some really dramatic experiences in front of other people. And you've had a tough time, as most experiences, I think, do, in terms of people accepting your stories. So let's start maybe with the weekend, and maybe go a little bit of background with your background with this Mission Rama group with Enrique, how many times you've been there, and then let's go through the weekend, whatever happened to you on this weekend, the experiences you had. I think you were one of the ones that went up into the mountain with Enrique on that evening.
Yes.
So we can talk about, first of all, let's go what happened in the past, your experiences, and maybe talk about I always like to ask people about their initiation, their crystal initiation. What happened for you when you had that? So let's go through the history of your experiences with this Mission Rama experience.
Mission Rama. Okay. Yeah, so Mission Rama, I was introduced to through Kimberly Marie, who's in the group, and she has we did the CE5 group that I'm a member of is in Bloomington, Indiana, and Jeffrey Becker hosts that. He wrote Paths to Contact, which is an amazing book, which is how I met him. And we did a Zoom call with Kimberly Marie one winter when it was too cold to skywatch. And Kimberly and I became friends. And eventually she sent me a link to Enrique Villanueva's interview on Open Minds on Gaia with Regina Meredith. And I believe he did 2 interviews there. And they spoke to me. I found them very interesting. He talked a lot about astral travel, which is something I would like to master. I just knew I wanted to go. When I found out about his retreat at Mount Shasta, I wanted to go. And so I did go. And I've gone ever since. So that was 3 years ago. I think the first one was the eclipse of 2017. So that was exciting. I didn't really know much about Rama per se. I found out a lot about it. When he first did it, he had a booklet of information that was very much about the protocols of Rama and explaining it, much like you would take a class in school or college. And now he's gotten more relaxed about it. There was no handout. But so it was interesting to learn. Now, I had already been doing CE5 contact, and I'd already had a contact on my own. So, I'm just open, to another type of contact. I didn't see it as, I just saw it as one of the many ways to have contact. But I was open to it. And what was very appealing, what's been very appealing about Rama to me is, it's so open, and Enrique is unusual because he does not seem to have any kind of ego, even though he's very intelligent and had a lot of experiences. You never hear Enrique speak negatively about other UFO people or other experiencers. Usually there's some sort of competition that just everybody seems to manifest. And he avoids that somehow. Like he's just like an angelic being. And he's accessible. He is on 24 hours a day for the entire weekend. Other people, it's like they come on, they do their talk, and then between times they are not available. And he's always available. And I don't get that kind of star fear talking to him. He's just there. So I love him for that. And then also the experiences aren't like, one of the first things he said was, if you want to talk to them, like star people, you need to be able to talk to a tree. And you need to certainly be able to talk to each other. And that just was a different way of thinking for me. And I loved it. And I had, I think the most memorable experience was a tree actually did communicate with me. And that at the end of that weekend, that first weekend, and that was just beautiful. So I keep going back because it's not just about star people, it's about consciousness everywhere in all things, trees, rocks, mountains. Yeah.
The 2017 event was a lot of stuff going on your side of the road there. Is that when you had your crystal ceremony or the initiation?
It is, yes. And it was, my understanding, it was the first time they had done that Enrique had been involved in it with at least the English-speaking group, or partly. And so we did it. And that was interesting. Fortunately, I have had my other experiences on my own. I tend to have more experiences on my own, or with smaller groups. My crystal initiation was very different, I think, than a lot of other people's. You could say I walked through the whole thing and really nothing happened. I actually was asking the next day, as I heard these wonderful stories of people, I just assumed I didn't get it. Because, Enrique was saying not everyone may necessarily get it. And basically I went through the motions and they did fold my hands at my chest, but I did not feel anything really. And so I actually asked Kimberly, because Kimberly Marie is the one that folded my hands at my chest. And I said, did you see the crystals? And she said, yes, you did get them. But as far as I was concerned, nothing happened. And I didn't feel anything anyone else felt. The only difference was the next day, we met another camper. And I can't remember why, but he was very intrigued in a tree that was right on the sand flats that was bending in an unusual way. And so we had the idea, let's just go and let's communicate with the tree, because that was something we just learned. And this time when I did communicate with the tree, I got visuals, which I had not been getting before. And so you're supposed to have this it's supposed to heighten your abilities. And so I started seeing visuals that I had not seen previously when I did the exercise. So I got that part of the exercise, but that was it really for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let's go to this year. You came in, I believe, Friday afternoon. So you didn't go up to the door earlier.
Did.
You did. Okay. You came. That we left after that. Okay. So let's go through what happened to you. You can go sort of starting at the beginning. Anything that happened on this weekend that you experienced.
Okay. So overall, I would say it was a great weekend. Nothing on my range of scales was particularly that shocking. So I went and I met at 11 a.m. at the door early for what they called early Friday work. And we went to the door. And again, we did the chanting at the door. And now it was the very last thing we did last year in 18. We went to the door for my first time. And that was the time when I was sitting with my back to the rock. And I did actually feel the rock vibrate. It pulsed up and down, similar to if you're on a bridge in Chicago and a bus goes by and it rocks you.
Okay.
And that was, no one had talked about that yet. And that was surprising. I didn't go in the doorway and I didn't really have anything else, but I felt that, and that blew my mind. And I knew with that I had to come back, just because I was like, what? Like a rock is moving, like this is unbelievable. And so this year I did get the pulsations of the rock. I was facing the rock this time and touching it with my hands. And it did pulse. It wasn't as intense. It was more of a finer vibration this time. And I was getting it. And then I did get this time, this very interesting, it was as if a magnet was inside me and someone was putting a strong magnet, rotating it around my head, and it was torquing me. So I couldn't feel anyone pushing me, but it was like from internally, I was being pushed like that. And, you know, I was like, what is this? This is interesting, but I didn't get any communication. I asked. Finally, I thought it was a sign that I should turn around. So I turned around and then it just went away. But what was exciting for me is when I compared notes with everyone else, there was a lot of messaging about these vortexes or this turning. And I did get one image. There was actually an image of a ball, a sphere, a small sphere, like a golf ball sized sphere that was dark in color. And there were elliptical orbits going around it in many different directions, which people say is like atoms.
Yeah.
So
you drew that, correct?
yes, I did actually. I have it. I have it. Actually, I have it under my computer. Here we go. Yeah, I drew it. So this.
There you go. Yeah, I remember you showing that. Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah. So that was exciting because I don't know, maybe I just have very high expectations, but you know, in this field, I feel like the grass, no matter what your experience is, the grass is always greener. So when you hear other people's stories, you're like, wow, how come I don't get that? And I think one thing that's very interesting to me is what I've learned as I've studied more. People that have abduction, what they call abduction experiences or experiences, oftentimes they went most of their life without even realizing they had these experiences. It's only later. And so it makes me feel a little bit better. But some people go into the doorway very easily. I have not had that experience yet, but I've had other experiences. So
yeah. And everybody seems to have individual experiences. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot that are exactly the same. Everybody, it's almost like it goes through your filter, correct?
Exactly. That's what I learned this trip is how important your mindset, where you are at that particular moment, it affects and it limits the type of experience you will have.
Okay. So you go through the doorway. About Saturday, did they kill you with the exercises like they did me, or are you in better shape?
It was okay. I do practice yoga.
Oh, you do? Okay. Good.
I do. Yes. I love, yeah. Kimberly Marie did a 40-day meditation challenge. And so I would always do yoga before. And yeah, so I love it. Yeah, it was okay. It's more the chanting, the nonstop chanting. Oh yeah. It's very tiring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. So we go Saturday morning and then we go to the cave. Does anything happen for you at the cave?
No, I don't think anything happened to me at the cave. No, I mean, I enjoyed it. It's a fun group and I was really enjoying taking pictures of the group, especially Jay because of his coat. Nothing happened to me.
Have you been to the cave before?
No.
Because Enrique does kind of special compared to other groups in that I know Ricardo stays a lot. Everybody stays on site, whereas
Yes.
people are going swimming in that the waterfall there, and then we're going to the cave, and it's like people are moving around quite a bit.
Yeah, I love that. The first year he said that he'd received a message that we were doing very well in our work that we were supposed to be doing, and he let us go to a lake. I forget, maybe it was called Crystal Lake. I don't know. It was not as cold as the falls, and that was wonderful. That was just awesome, especially my first time in Shasta to get to explore is nice.
You were in the water. Describe the water because people were warning people about it.
Yeah, it's very so I went in the water the first time Friday. It was extremely hot and I could not wait to get in the water. And I jumped in a deep part. It wasn't that crowded. And I had difficulty breathing. It kind of took the breath out of me. So I just went in and as quickly as I could got back out. And it was so, I don't think I've ever been in water that cold. It was so cold that when I got the top part of my body out, actually my forearms, which were now in the air and in the sun, felt the coldest. I think my legs were just completely numb. So I was in awe of other people that just wandered around in the water. You know, somebody there said that he thought the water was 58 degrees, which sounds much warmer than it felt, but
yeah, it would be just snow water coming off the mountain.
Yes, but it was so clean. Yeah, it was so clean and such a beautiful thing. I had to get in, but it was perfect just to dip in and then dry off in the sun. It's beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, because it was actually very, very hot. The air temperature was very hot. I think it was 100 degrees or something.
Yeah, but it was a dry heat, so you weren't sweating, but you were dehydrated. Yes.
Okay, so we go. Then we come back on Saturday evening, and that's when all the sort of the fireworks start. even though I think you may be the same as me, is that I really didn't have any personal experiences. We did the raising of the vibration. This oming went on for quite a while, and then I think it was maybe 11:15, and that's when there was a lot of people at the door got the message. There was all this stuff about 12 midnight,
Yes.
12 till 3. And so you go on the group, maybe you can just describe, even though you weren't really involved, you head on the group that leaves to go up on the mountain. So you're going, I actually felt sorry for you guys because, I mean, it was freezing cold where we were, and we were thinking like, oh my goodness, these guys are going even higher up in the mountain.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so describe that experience. What happened there?
Yeah, that was a very interesting. And I would like to add that about the 12 o'clock thing, you know, so before we even did we met in Shasta, there was, there's usually some kind of contact, and there was a crop circle that appeared right before we went. And it was a sun, I believe, a sun type shape, and it was pointing to 12 o'clock. And so that was the confirmation that they got. It was a response. It literally appeared, I think, the next day. I forget what day it was. I want to say it was July 20th, which was an important day in Rama. And that is, I believe, the day. Ray would know, or Maddie would know. Certainly Enrique would know. But anyway, that is where I think the 12 o'clock, one of the 12 o'clock messages came from, but which is interesting. But so yes, we were at campsite and we were doing the chanting. And what I do remember, it was interesting. It's different experiences each time, but I remember being initially extremely cold. And then as we chanted, a warmth came from my left shoulder. And it just came over, and I was actually very comfortable. And I did not want to leave the campsite. There was a lot of activity going on while we chanted. I don't know what we're supposed to, I think we're supposed to have our eyes closed, but that's very difficult for me. So I just stare at the stars. And there was so much activity, and it was just beautiful. And I could feel the energy. I mean, it was every few seconds there was a possible satellite or a streak, and I saw one very dim satellite going, and then it flared up and disappeared, which is usually a good confirmation that it was not a satellite. And there was so much going on. It was just so exciting, and you could feel the energy. And so I really didn't want to leave base camp, but Mark had gotten a message that he was to leave you behind so that you could have your initiation, and we were to go up. So I was like, whatever, I'll go up. I'd been up there before, but not to this spot. So I was glad I got to go, because it was a fun hike, and going up the mountain, it really was a treacherous hike. It was very soft terrain, and it was very steep, and it was dark. But we went up to this bizarre little part of the mountain. It was just really like the path, and we just stopped. There were 10 of us, and it was very precarious getting our chairs to not roll over where we were seated. But it was private, and it was beautiful, and we continued to do the chanting, and the light shows were continuing. It was just an incredible spot, because you look over the sides of the mountain and it's just dark. It reminded me of scuba diving, and just being able in those parts where you can't see the ocean floor, and it was beautiful. So I enjoyed that. And then we had this message that Enrique received, that we were going to get a sign, a very clear sign, and 2 people were going to go off, leave the group. One would have a contact experience. And I think, my own 2 cents, I think that they do this on purpose, as a kind of a group exercise, a training exercise, so that the idea was that we had to come to a consensus of who would be that person. I mean, obviously it would seem that all 10 of us could have the experience, but then we wouldn't have to work out who was going to be that one person. So I think that was the real lesson. And apparently we didn't do very well, because we had trouble determining who would be that one person. And I said, because the way Enrique phrased it, he said, who is ready to go? And so I said, I was one of the people that said, yes, I'm ready to go, but I don't have to go. And Enrique, I think beat himself up a little bit. I think the best way to have phrased it is, who does everyone think should go? And that's, it was really hard for him, because he's the leader and he doesn't want to pick favorites. But there was a relative consensus that Mario, because Mario was the person in the group that had received some sort of vision of where to go. And so he was leading us up this mountain forever. I mean, we were joking that we were never going to get there. And finally,
and he moved at an incredible rate, correct? It was
Oh my
described
gosh.
moving up like a mountain goat going up the mountain, and you guys
Yes,
are trying to
he
keep
was
up.
always way ahead of us. The rest of us are just trying not to trip in the dark, and he's just blasting up, and he's like zigzagging, because he's looking for this particular tree formation
Yeah.
that he had seen. And we finally got it. So I think most of us did feel, and I think if we had fully understood the situation better, we would have agreed that Mario was the one. There was a lot of us that said Mario should go, but of course, Mario also, I think in his own thing, he knew everybody wanted to go. So he also felt bad. So he was saying, well, I don't have to go, and so then Enrique's like, well, maybe you don't want to go, and so it was confusing, but in the end, I actually, Enrique was in the middle of a story that Vahid had asked him about his experience in the desert long, long ago. And I fell asleep. I just blacked out. And then the next thing I knew, I came to, and two people were missing from our group. And so I was like, oh, did we get the sign? And I was like, who went? And
Oh.
apparently what happened is, I don't remember if there was a sign because I was blacked out, but two people from the group literally just decided to go on their own, and they just went. And which I was glad that somebody went, because Enrique was saying it's just not going to happen tonight. And I was like, well, somebody should go,
He
And,
was
and
actually suggesting that everybody go back before this happened, right?
yes,
Yeah.
he was. And I was like, no, I was like, oh, don't do that. Like somebody has to go. And so they did go up. And then at one point, we didn't know where they were. We were actually kind of worried because they're just gone. So then we started calling their name, and then surprise, surprise, they responded back and they said, we're having an experience right now. Just, wait. And so we were like, oh, and because we could look up behind where they went up the mountain behind us, and it was just dark. There's nothing there. So we didn't know, but it was kind of exciting just to be near enough that you could hear them and think they're having some kind of experience. Then they came back, and Jeff Sell, who I guess guided Vahid, Vahid had an orb on his right shoulder all night, and he was the one actually sitting next to me. So my second vote would have been to Vahid because of that bizarre orb that followed him, and it was the direction up the mountain that they felt that they were supposed to go. So, and it kept visiting him. So, anyway, so they went up. Then they said the Zendra or whatever it's called is still there. You all are welcome to go. So a lot of us did go up. And while we were there, standing there, it seemed like in a soft focus that yes, there was some light movement going on at your feet, but it was the kind of thing where the light was so low, it wasn't a real certainty. I was like, okay, you're telling me there's light swirling at my feet. Maybe there's, I wasn't really sure, but it did look like I saw a couple red sparks in my right palm. But just as that happened, Jeff said, let's move up further. So then we moved up further, and I don't believe I had any other experiences. Nothing nothing that was so strong that I would have been like dying to report it. It was kind of in that foggy zone for me, not really sure that anything happened. But Vahid did have an interesting experience, and then it was kind of confirmed later. Apparently Maddie from our group, before we had arrived, had received a message that she needed to meet Vahid. She'd met him before, but she needed to really get to know him. She'd had a pain in one of her hands, and at dinner the last night, she explained, it was before dinner. When we were leaving camp, she explained that she had a message that she needed to put her hand on Vahid's hand, where Vahid had received a spark, which he didn't see. His eyes were closed, but Jeff Sell was standing next to him, and he saw the spark, which was supposedly a crystal initiation. And Maddie put her hand on his, and she felt it, and her hand stopped hurting. So that was an interesting confirmation, and also interesting that she knew before the entire trip that she was supposed to. It's like almost like they knew what the outcome was going to be of that experience. But anyway, it was interesting. And that was really it. I just enjoyed the scenery and being up there. It was great. I did feel terrible because apparently whenever you split up the group, some people feel left out, that did happen.
And we did have the vibration drop at the site, so there was no crystal ceremony but then you learn from that. You pick up, to know next time you take a vote as to who should go. I think Mark brought that up, and they were going to do that next. That you, instead of saying, are you ready to go? Who do you want to go? and you can't pick yourself, that sort of thing.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
mentioned
Yeah.
that Mario was looking for this. I remember him talking about the tree. It was bent over in a triangle. So you actually found this site? Is that correct?
Well, at the time, Mario did not explain to us what he was looking for. He was just rummaging, like a dog is the way I would say, like a dog sniffing. He was zigzagging
Yeah.
with incredible speed, going up these things, looking for this tree. And apparently at some point he found it. Yes. I didn't know. All I knew is we finally had stopped. I was like, when are we going to stop? Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so that's Saturday night. Anything happen Sunday?
Did anything happen Sunday? I mean, Enrique told us his story, which was exciting.
Yes. Yeah, the stories were incredible on this
Yes.
on the Sunday morning. It went on. I taped the whole thing. I'll have to send you a copy. It went for an hour and 34 minutes, that discussion.
Oh my God.
There was a lot of stuff where you didn't think anything was really going on, and then it just was that nothing went on in your little part of the world, but a lot of people were tapped into something there.
Yes, and I loved that. This is definitely my cross to bear. You know, it's like priceless to have verification with other people to witness what you witness, because when you see the extraordinary and you're the only one, it's almost a curse. Almost, it's still nice, but it's just so much nicer when there's somebody else, especially a lot of people, to verify what you're seeing. And so that was wonderful and exciting.
Wonderful. Okay, can we go to your stories now?
Sure.
Okay, this is I warn people to brace yourself. This is
yeah.
incredible. So
okay.
So it starts early. You have an early talk about, because most people don't realize, and they put it together later, that they have very early childhood experiences which sort of indicate something's about to happen here.
Yes. So and I think that definitely. So I guess the best way would be for me to go chronologically.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'll try to be as concise as possible. So my first experience was very clear because I was on a flight to the Philippines, my first time to the Philippines, and I was in second grade. I was 7 years old, and it was morning. It was dawn, so the sun was rising in the clouds below us, and it's amazing how clearly I remember this. But I remember looking out the window at the clouds below, and it was this beautiful pink hue. And I was mesmerized, and I was very much in gratitude at the natural beauty below me. And as I was looking below at the clouds, suddenly I noticed there was a circular hole in the cloud cover below. It was like a sea of clouds below us. And I looked in, and inside the hole, it looked like the hole was lined with columns, like Roman classical architectural columns. And I was confused at how the clouds could make such an amazing, almost like temple or rotunda type formation. And so I was just staring at that in awe, kind of perplexed. And then at some point, my gaze went horizontal, like with the wing, and just out of thin air, boom, there was a craft. And the craft was the color of that pink hue. It had no color. It was as if the whole thing was a mirror, except at the top, it was that kind of generic saucer shape with a bump at the top. And in the bump at the top were little black windows that had dividers. And the craft was rotating in I'm trying to think, a counterclockwise position just in front of the wing, literally I would say within 5 feet of the end of the wing. And it was slowly moving. It was maintaining speed with the plane, but going just a little bit faster and coming in closer to the fuselage of the plane. And I just was in shock. And after a few moments, I did have a moment of fear. I imagined a laser beam might come out of the craft and blast the airplane. And I think shortly after that is when it just instantly blasted off. And in the motion of travel that we were going, it veered off to the right just a little bit. So my recollection is that we were sitting on the right side of the plane. And then it went off to the right at an angle, and it just, boom, was gone. And I was like, and my dad was awake right next to me with a camera in his lap. And I told him that I'd just seen a UFO. And my dad says he was shocked that I knew. I either called it a flying saucer or a UFO. I think I called it a flying saucer. And he's like, how does my son know what a flying saucer is? And he's like, why didn't you tell me I had a camera? And I'm like, I was just, I wasn't thinking that way. and as far as I know, no one else on the plane reported it, but most people were asleep. Anyway, that was the experience, and that ignited a curiosity in me. So in my school, in my elementary school, I checked out every single book on UFOs. But the only common thread I could find was the instant acceleration. But most other ones were blue or they were glowing, and mine was not really glowing. It looked like it was a mirror, just a mirror, and so it was reflecting the color of the sky, but you could see the shape. Anyway, so that was it. And then around that time, I don't know, but this I only connected later, but I did have a very amazing experience, which I assumed was a ghost. I was young. I was around that age, maybe a little bit younger, maybe a little bit older, but pretty young. In the middle of the night, I woke up, and my bed was in the corner of the room. And I woke up and I looked at the corner, and my room was lit up. And I assumed that either someone had come in and turned on my bedroom lights, or I had left the lights on. So I was just getting up to go turn off the lights of my bedroom. And as I sat up in my bed in the middle of my room, at the back wall was a man, what I call the popcorn man. And he was in a yellow and red striped suit, three-piece suit. He had a straw hat, and the ribbon on the straw hat was also that same yellow and red striped fabric. He was on a bicycle that was yellow and red stripes. It was all those yellow and red stripes. The front wheel of the bicycle was one of those enormous old-fashioned ones that's, like maybe 4 feet. And then on front of that was a big rectangular popcorn booth, and it was striped yellow and red. And then off that was an umbrella coming up, a huge umbrella that you'd have at like a resort, and that had yellow and red striped fabric coming down. And all of this was illuminated. Everything was illuminated, and you could see through it. So I could see through him the wall of the bedroom. He was a skinny human form, tall. I would say he was 7 feet tall, extremely skinny. He was staring straight ahead. I was off to his side. He was not looking at me. A very pale white skin, like a clown. And later, I would describe him as what Nikolai Tesla, that kind of classic image of Nikolai Tesla, where he's dressed in his three-piece suit with that curly hair. He looked like that. That was the closest, except his eyes were blue, and I believe they filled the entire eyeball. There was no difference. It was just glowing blue. And I remember I saw him there, and I was just in complete shock. I froze, not like just I personally froze myself because I couldn't understand. And I kept thinking, just wait, in a second, it's going to click and this will all make sense. But it didn't. And what happened is he was staring at the wall straight ahead. He was not moving at all. And then very slowly, as I stared at him, his head began to turn toward me. And previously, when he made eye contact with me is when I blacked out. And that would, whenever I would retell that story, that the hands on my, the hairs on my body would stand up, especially the back of my neck, and it would kind of freak me out. And I just thought it was a ghost. And anyway, thank goodness I told my brother about it and my family. My family had forgotten it. My brother had not forgotten that story because anyway, it finally, all of that passed. That's all I really remembered from my childhood as being weird. And in high school, I basically kind of forgot about the UFO topic. It wasn't my interest. And then in August of 2014, I came across a bunch of Netflix UFO videos, and I was shocked by the amount of new information that was out there. And I stayed up all night watching them, and was very excited. And my interest had started. And that night, I mean, I don't know. I think I went to bed maybe around 3 o'clock, 3:30, around maybe 6 a.m. or maybe 5 a.m. There was a knocking on my bedroom window, and I live on the top floor of a condo building in downtown Chicago, and I live in the corner. And this was a Saturday, and there was a knocking at my window. My curtain was down, and it scared me. I couldn't figure out what was going on, but it kept knocking, and then it would stop. And I kept thinking, I could raise my curtain, but I didn't want to. I was scared. And anyway, and then it kept knocking, and I was like, "What in the world is that?" And I'd lived there. I moved in 2004, so I've lived here for a while. I've never heard this. The only thing I could think of is possibly window washers were doing something. So I wanted to check. And when I finally did get up, when the sun had come up, and I did go out and I checked the whole building. I went around to see if window washers were working, but they weren't. And also, we get notices when they come, and they don't work on Saturdays. But after that happened, that startled me, and I began to think about it. I asked my boyfriend if he had heard it, and when I replicated the sound, I was shocked that the knocking was actually exactly, when I tried to replicate it, it was literally 100% exactly the same sound that I heard, which was interesting. And so then I started to think about it, and I started to think, wow, if you were another intelligence and you were using our protocols for greeting, politely introducing yourself, you would knock. And I said, except you wouldn't knock on the 9th floor window, you would knock, you would actually, in our building, you would use the call box, and you would call on the phone. So at that, and then a few days later, that is exactly what started to happen. They started to call my phone. Well, I say they. Someone started to call my phone at about 4:45 in the morning. I refused to pick up the phone. I was scared, and it kept happening. They would not leave a message. I checked the call box, and I have 2 names in my call box. I have a J.A. and a J. Jander. So if it was a friend in distress at my call box, 1, they could call my cell phone, and 2, they could try both numbers. They only called 1. And I asked my neighbors while I was playing with the call box that I would say, hey, did anybody randomly call your call box last night? And everybody said no. So then I started to think, wait a minute, that popcorn man experience, if you think about it, that was a pretty friendly incarnation to experience. He was on this awkward bike. He was well dressed, and it was an old fashioned 3-piece suit. He had popcorn, this cumbersome umbrella, and then a friend of mine that goes to Nepal and hikes in these areas where you can experience people that have not met Western or modern man. There's a protocol that you learn when you greet those people, and it's to immediately stop what you're doing, look down, do not make any sudden movements, and very, very slowly start to tilt your head to make eye contact with them. And when my friend told me that story, I was like, oh my God, that is exactly what the popcorn man did to me. And so I realized it was definitely a benevolent thing. Fast forward, I began researching Dr. Greer, whoever, and I came across, I also liked Clifford Stone. And Clifford Stone had done I think it was at the Star 11 conference, I don't know. He did a promotion for Paths to Contact, that book. And I bought that book, which was written by Jeffrey Becker. I thought it was written by Clifford Stone when I bought it, but I read it anyway. And that book, Paths to Contact, each chapter is a different person representing a cross-section of the world, from unemployed perhaps, or blue collar, to professor, doctor, scientist. And it's everybody's just how they got into all this, like what were their experiences. And that was just so comforting to me, because knocking was one of the experiences. Everybody gets contacted in different ways, but it helped me rationalize what was happening to me and know that I wasn't losing my mind. Because as these things happen, you start to question your own sanity. Especially, my boyfriend wasn't really interested in what I was talking about. So I really needed an audience to listen to me. And so I ended up writing to Jeff Becker, who wrote Paths to Contact, to ask him about some of the experiences in the book. He told me about his CE5 group, and I joined it. And I went there in, I think it was June of 2015, perhaps, I believe was the first time. And I had my first CE5 flash bulb. We had 2 flash bulbs. It was literally, I think it was just Jeff and his wife and I, and it was overcast, and we got 2 flash bulbs, which was just like a camera flash going just right, where we were looking. And that energized me. It was so exciting. I drove all the way down to my parents' house after that. They lived down in Alabama. It's like I can't remember. It's a several hour drive, 6.5, maybe more. And immediately when I got home to their house, I went out to the back and I looked up at the sky and I got another flash bulb. And anyway, that was actually more important to me, because then it was just me and the flash bulb. Before, it was Jeff and his wife. So I didn't know if the flash bulb was really for me, but at that. And anyway, that led me, I got so excited that night. I went for a walk and I was thinking about the popcorn man. And I remember, as I relived the experience in my mind, right when I got to the moment where the popcorn man made eye contact with me, I got this bizarre, it was the first time that I knew of, it's like a sparkler ignites about, I don't know, 15 feet up above me and 15 feet to my right, and it just crossed the road. It just out of thin air materialized, it's sparking, and it just shoots and does an arc across me, and it went into a tree. And I felt like, whoa, I was like, what was that? Like I stopped to look at the tree, like I thought a being had just flown into the tree, and maybe one did, I don't know, but that was all I saw. But it was synchronous with that popcorn man experience. So fast forward, I ultimately, uh, Jeff at another CE5 meeting had been at some meeting in upstate New York, and during their meditation, someone's phone turned on and it started playing this binaural beat meditation on YouTube. And the person whose phone it was said they had never seen that before. So I was very interested in this binaural beat. I got it from Jeff and I would listen to it. And it's the most beautiful binaural beat meditation. And so I listened to that a lot, and I was able to bring myself back to the popcorn man experience. And so what I did, I just was listening to it. It was a very interesting experience that night. And I went back and I was doing the whatever, listening to it. I relaxed. I revisited the popcorn man experience in my mind. And this time I went further. And so when he made eye contact with me, I actually left the bed. And I don't know, when I say I don't know, just my visual. I left the bed and I merged with the popcorn man in the middle of the room. At that point, when we merged, he was just white light. He was no longer that shape. And I don't know what I was, but we merged and I had the sense that I was him. And I don't know if I was him in the sense that we had just merged, or that I was him in another life, or that we're all one. I didn't understand. But then I woke up and I was really quite excited by that. I got up, I went to the bathroom, and I looked out at the sky, and I remember a star appeared right where I was looking. And I thought, ooh, this is exciting. And I thought, let me go back and do that again. So I went back, I did it again. And I think the first time was a test just to see how much I could take. And I had the same experience again. I merged with him, but this time it went further. I merged with him, and now suddenly I had a vision from his perspective of myself back in time when I was asleep as a child in the corner. And so he's like there looking at me. And so I see myself asleep, and it's like the little tiny baby me. And I see myself wake up, and I see myself, my jaw drop, and I'm shocked, and I'm just staring. And then all of a sudden, I had the most powerful sensation of love that I've ever felt. And it was love for me. And it literally in the meditation, tears were like tears of joy and love were pouring out of my ears, my eyes, and they filled up my ears and were draining out. And then and I blacked out. And since then, now when I revisit, that's all I remember. I've not revisited that moment anymore, but it was unusual. I expected, if anything, I would have been beamed up to a ship or something. That's not what happened. We merged. I don't know exactly what it means, but it was a beautiful experience. And now when I revisit the popcorn man experience in my mind, the hairs on my neck don't stand up anymore. So that was pretty exciting. In between all that, Jeffrey Becker had told me about Dolores Cannon, and I've decided to read everything that she's ever written. And I'm in the Convoluted Universe series now. I started there, and then I went back and read everything. And as I would read her work was so exciting to me, her experiences, and I don't know, it just brought great excitement. And one experience from that, I was reading it, went to bed. In the middle of the night, I woke up for unknown reasons, and in the right corner of my room, by my bathroom door, there was a humanoid shape that was glowing with Christmas lights inside of it, multicolored Christmas lights. No, you couldn't see the hands, but you could see like the shoulders and the basic humanoid form. And I saw it, and I was in this very relaxed state, and I just thought, welcome. And at that, immediately, it just glided up to the side of the bed, which is about maybe 3 or 4 feet. And it just hovered there at the side of the bed, normal human height. And the head became swirling patterns that were moving. And the body stayed the Christmas light, like it's a glowing white with Christmas lights in it. And I just kept looking at the body and the head, and that's all I remember. I went to sleep. But the next morning, I was very excited about this, and I talked to my dad and my brother basically the entire day. I didn't realize how upsetting it was. Wait, no, sorry, this one wasn't that upsetting, but that's a different experience. But anyway, I was just excited. And anyway, fast forward the next night, I pick up my Dolores Cannon book and I'm reading it. The very next paragraph, it describes Christmas light beings, literally exactly what I experienced. And so, I was like, oh my, anyway, that was phenomenal. A few days later, maybe 2 or 3 days later, I woke up in the middle of the night and there was a dog sitting at the base of my bed. And it was a dog I'd never seen before. I've now learned it's like a Northern African dog. It's a weird dog that has curly hair that can cover its face. And it was just sitting on its hind legs and it was panting with its tongue out. And I just was staring at it and I was confused because it was a dog that, it wasn't like a dog. It wasn't a pet of mine. I still don't know why it was there, but it was there. And I just stared at it. And then it eventually floated up and the body disappeared and just the head was there. And the head became getting smaller and smaller with the tongue out. It was just, and then it just floated up and it was gone. And I have no idea what that was about, but it happened. Another experience that happened and I think this experience preceded that experience that I just had, because by the time I saw the Christmas light being, I was more comfortable with seeing beings. But was one night I was having a dream. In the dream, I was with 2 friends from high school, and I was being separated in the dream. They were talking, and I was being pulled away from them, and it was a little bit unnerving to me, and I became uncomfortable, and I was trying to get their attention in the dream that I was being pulled away from them, and they weren't hearing me, and I wasn't actually able to speak in the dream. And then I actually felt the physical sensation of someone pressing up against my thigh. I was in my bed and I started trying to scream. I actually was trying to scream for help and I couldn't. And that was extremely alarming. And I woke myself up with this weird, making that kind of a sound. I think I woke my boyfriend up. I think he tapped me like, what's going on? And but maybe I didn't actually, because the next thing that happened is when I did finally wake up, I looked and there was on my ceiling of my bedroom, there was a weird propeller in one corner. And it was made out of black and clear checkers, the propeller blades. And they were spinning, they were semi-transparent. And they were rotating. I don't remember which direction, but I knew when I saw the propeller, it caught my eye because it was moving on the ceiling. And each turn that it did, each full revolution, it grew fainter. It grew more and more faint. And so I was just staring at it and I had this strange sense that I'd seen it before. It felt familiar, but it finally disappeared. And when it completely disappeared, suddenly my entire room changed color. My room had been kind of like a beige color. It's actually white. But I didn't notice because of the time of night. I just thought that was the color. But all of a sudden, when the propeller disappeared, there was a white noise in my room as well. That disappeared, and the room changed color. And I was like, whoa. And so I looked around at the room like, whoa, what just happened? And there was a little glowing red golf ball that was floating over my bed, and it zipped behind my light fixture. And then that was it. Everything was over. And now that experience is the one that really disturbed me. So the next day, again, I was on the phone with my dad and my brother, talking about it, and I could sense they're kind of being annoyed listening to my story and thinking that I was perhaps crazy, and I started to wonder if I was crazy. I was very upset by it, and the next morning I woke up and I had I had the idea that I should get my Dr. Greer app, which has these magnetometers and like weird phenomena readings on it, and including a compass, and check those over my bed. And so I did. I didn't get really much with the Geiger meter or whatever it's called, the magnetometer, but the compass, I found the compass, there's about a 3-foot square right where my leg was, where I felt that sensation, where you put the compass into it and it turns 180 degrees. And it's still, I haven't checked in the last few months, but that was back in like say 2014, 2015. And up until even this year, it continues to do it. In fact, Jeffrey Becker, who was in the military and he worked on nuclear submarines, he and his wife stayed in my place. And I wasn't here. So I left them instructions with manual compasses, regular, hey, please check out my bed. And he confirmed, and he cannot explain what's going on. I had another friend come out, and there are two other locations in my living room aligned with my bedroom door where there is this phenomena. And the phenomena is not consistent. I've removed my mattress, and you can go to the floor, and at the floor of my bedroom, it's fine. My compass is fine. You go up to where my bed is, and there's a little area where it does this. And I don't know why. Somebody explained that it's just in the city you have electromagnetic radiation that causes this phenomena. I don't know. I've checked my parents' house, and it does not happen there. But the thing that did happen, seeing the compass confirm that something weird is going on with the magnetic field in my room, made me feel much more relaxed. And I felt that, I wasn't crazy. So that was great. And then the last story I'll say is that was, I guess one of my more exciting stories. And this story is a very long story, but basically what happened during the 2016 political leading up to that election, my parents and I were on opposite political sides, and I was not. I had a lot of growth to do in that, and I was not. I learned from that. I was not very understanding of their views, and I was horrible. And I said I was just horrible, and it escalated to a point where it was so bad that I had a talk. I had to sit down, and I was told that I would either shut up or leave the family. And I don't live with them, so it was more of a symbolic leaving, which was kind of even more painful. And after that meeting, I was outside at that meeting, and I felt pretty alone and just disgusted with this planet and the people on it. I was beside myself because everything that I stood against, and I think that my parents had other reasons. I want to believe that they have other reasons for supporting what they supported or support. They have some good intentions. Of course, what I was seeing was not that. And I couldn't understand how my parents could be that way, and it just violently disgusted me. So anyway, I couldn't go back in the house, and I sat on the terrace steps, and I looked out at the view, and not even knowing where it came from, I just looked up, but just with complete sincerity, I looked at the sky and I said, "Take me away, I'm done." And immediately, exactly where I was looking, a star appeared. And when it appeared, I kind of was like, wait, did that just happen? And then it started to move north very, very slowly. And as it moved north, it faded. It was fading. And then it would come back on. And it was a very regular on, off. It was very beautiful. And I got a message. And the message was, we're here. We're always with you. Even when you can't see us, we're with you. And I was just, it went so far north, it disappeared behind the trees. And I went from being, at my bottom to just ecstatic. And now I was so energized, and I felt so thankful for that experience that I couldn't go back in the house. And so I went for a walk, and they have this beautiful road. And so I just went, there's a big field, and I was walking. And as I was walking, so excited, those spark occurrences were happening again. But it's very common for me now to have those. And I know it's when I'm extremely excited. I don't know what they mean, but they're synchronous with my thoughts. And so anyway, so that was happening, and that was wonderful. I just stayed outside. I remember, I think it was about 3:30 in the morning when I finally, literally like this experience had happened at like 7:30, and it was 3:30 in the morning when I finally went inside. I'd just been pacing around, so excited. And I was out. I remember the last thought I had that night was it was a drought in the area, and drought restrictions were coming soon. And I was watering the plants as much as I could until the drought restrictions hit. And I remember I checked the lawn in the back, and it was soaking wet finally. And I said, wow, I watered the shit out of this lawn. Boof, there was a huge spark. And I thought, that's interesting. Like, I wonder if these sparks have to do with the plants. I didn't understand. But the next night, we had 6 people. We had some out-of-town family, and we were at dinner on that same terrace, and I had my back to the view, and my auntie, who knows of my experiences but had never seen anything with me. She was directly opposite me, so she was facing the view. And I had said nothing at dinner. I was still not very happy with my family. And she just finally said toward the end of dinner, she's like, oh, I think I just saw a shooting star. So I kind of looked back and I kind of thought, you know what? I'm just going to share a little bit of what happened last night. I'm not going to say why. I'm just going to say what I saw. So I did. And I shared it in a much shorter version than this. And I looked, and everybody just kind of had this look that ranged from, you know, you're crazy, to why are you sharing this with us, to, you know, it was not, I didn't feel that anyone believed me. I felt that at most they thought that there was something wrong with me. It was not a good feeling. And I just shut up, and I turned around in my seat and I looked at the sky and I said, come on, guys. And instantly, exactly where I had described the phenomena to have disappeared behind the trees, it was back. The only difference is now it was going south, and it was blinking, and I was so excited. And I was like, do you see it? Do you see it? And everybody at the table was like, yes, we see it, we see it, we see it. I'm like, who can explain it? Who can explain it? And my cousin, who's an engineer and a devout faith, he actually got up from the table and started to walk back to the house. And he stayed there though, but he looked very uncomfortable. And it went across the sky. The moon was about full that night. And from our perspective, it bisected the moon, the trajectory. After it bisected the moon, it did 2 more flashes, except these flashes were increased in size to about 1/4 the size of the moon. And they were so intense and so bright, and it was as if a beam of light was shining directly at us. It was unbelievable, and it was so undeniable. And that was the finale. And at that, I was down in the backyard, jumping up and down, and I was screaming profanities. I was so excited. And I ran up to the table, and I was like, who can explain it? Who can explain it? And my dad was like, I can't explain it. I can't explain it. And I was like, you all thought I was fucking crazy. It's like, who's crazy now? You know, and it was wonderful. And anyway, and I remember we kind of stood around for a while, and I think my dad said something about, oh, well, are you going to look for it tomorrow night? You know, but anyway, they just kind of, I don't know, they were able to just shrug it. I was kind of, you know, anyway, it was more exciting for me than for them. And I stayed out that night, and I at this point decided to message my CE5 group, Jeff Becker, and just let him know about this experience. And it was very exciting because when he responded back to me, I remember I saw it on my phone, and I really wanted to concentrate on his response. And so I went to the woods to relieve myself so I could just fully concentrate on what he wrote. And while I was going to the bathroom, I thought I saw a flash. And I was like, you know, did I see a flash? And I went out to the open area of the lawn, and boom, big flash. And I thought, I got a message that was, whatever you're about to read from Jeff, if you have any doubt that this is for you, this is a sign that means it is for you. And Jeff's response was amazing, and I still have it. And he said, until I received I received some information today that I knew I was supposed to share, but until I received your message, I didn't know who I was supposed to share it with and when. And the message was, I don't know, somebody sent him a text document. And it said something to the effect of, we are your star family. We're always with you. Even when you don't see us, we're with you. In some lives, you remembered us. Sometimes you didn't. But we will be reunited at some time, something like that. And I was just mind blown. Anyway, so that was beautiful. And I did another one of those nights where I just kept going and walking and getting those bizarre phenomena. But anyway, there's more to that story actually that happened later, but it was an experience that, and I wonder how many other people have these types of experiences. I had a contact experience, and in that contact experience, the end of it, I was allowed to remember a good portion of it, not all of it. But I was told, you're not to share this experience for safety reasons. And there was no more information given. I've tried to share the story, and I get chills. So I just, until I get another sign, I won't go into that as much as I would like to. But anyway, that let me know. Anyway, it was just an amazing, that was probably the most amazing experience. And I guess I know that you'd asked about my dad's experience, and I did actually call him yesterday to ask if he had permission for me to share it. And he's open to sharing the experience also, if you'd like to contact him directly, since it is his experience. I was a part of it. But another good experience, interesting experience, was at my parents' home. I was visiting, and my dad was borrowing my car to go to work. And late one night, I decided he has quite a commute. I thought, let me just top off the gas for him so he doesn't have to stop and get gas. So I went out, filled up the car, and I paid attention. He'd been driving my car, and he had left the car key, which is black, on the gear shift. And the gear shift is covered in a gray leather. So it's a stick shift, and it's quite obvious. It's not difficult to find the key on a black key on gray leather. And so I meticulously put the key exactly where he left it. The only difference, the tank was full. So I went to bed. The next morning, my dad woke me up early, and he's like, hey, where's the key to the car? And I'm like, it's exactly where you left it. It's on the gear shift. And he's like, he knew. He's like, if Jan says it's on the gear shift, it is on the gear shift. So even though he'd been down to the car and couldn't find it, he was going back. And he's like, okay, I guess somehow I just didn't see it. Now, in the interim, he'd gone down, couldn't find the key, went back inside, told my mom. She has now gone down, looked in the car for the key. And as she's coming back up, I guess they meet, they decide to go back together. My dad has instructions for me of exactly where the car key is. So my dad has checked for the key. My mom has checked for the key. Now together they go back and look for the key. They cannot find the key. So my mom is like, well, you're going to be late. Let me just get you the spare key. So they get the spare key, and my dad drives off, a stick shift. So he's moving that thing. 10 minutes into his drive, he looks down, and the key is exactly where I said it was. And he thinks that the key has fallen out of the ignition, and somehow, and so he looks and he's like, no, there's a key in the ignition, and there's a key here. And he is so confused, and he calls my mom. He is so confused, he actually calls my mom. And I remember hearing the phone ring. And later I come down, and my mom's like, you're not going to believe this, with the key. And I'm like, actually, I do believe it. And she's like, why, what is this? What does this mean? And I'm like, they're trying to wake him up just to show him that there's more to our reality. That's all, just to expand his consciousness and get his interest. And so anyway, so there was that. And that happened. And then very shortly thereafter, my parents had upgraded their alarm system. And the new control pad was much smaller than the original. And the control pad in their master bedroom, it's just around the corner from their bed, had been installed, but it left this big area of a hole where the other one there was a hole in the sheetrock. And my dad thought, oh, let me try to see if I can patch this hole. So he tried, and he put spackle on the wall, and it had hardened, but it was much harder than he thought. And it was just this mess. It was just a big, bumpy, lumpy mess. And he thought, well, I'll just put a lot on there, and then I'll go back in and I'll sand it down and paint it. And so he remembers going to bed that night and checking, and sure enough, it was a hard, rock hard, lumpy mess on the wall. And he went to bed. The next morning, his plan for that day was just to fix that wall and sand it. And so he had breakfast or whatever, and he went up and he was getting his supplies ready to fix the wall. And when he went up to the wall, lo and behold, it was perfect. Everything was perfect. And so he asked my mom, if she had done it. And she's like, are you crazy? And he asked everyone, anyone involved in the house, if anyone had done it, including the people that installed the alarm. He called them. He's like, hey, did you guys fix? And they're like, no, we don't do that. So anyway, so that was another experience he had that's unexplainable, like who fixed the wall. And it was because it was done overnight, right? There was no dust anywhere. So it was an interesting experience.
And you would know that because you're an architect, correct?
Oh, yes, I am. Yes.
And your father, I don't know if you can get into this, but your father's a radiologist.
Exactly.
A prominent radiologist.